The most enduring legend about Hoover Dam is that workers fell into wet concrete and were sealed inside forever. A 1984 country song even immortalized it. Engineers say it is impossible. Concrete was poured in lifts just 6 inches thick. But what is actually hidden inside this dam's history is worse than bodies in the wall. The official death toll says 96 men. Independent investigators put it closer to 116. The difference is where this story begins. The image of men forever sealed inside Hoover Dam's concrete has haunted the project for decades. Popular culture helped cement the myth. Willie Nelson's voice in the 1984 song Highwayman gave that idea new life, echoing on job sites and in roadside diners. But the engineering reality tells a different story. Concrete at Hoover was poured in thin layers called lifts, rarely more than 6 inches thick. Each lift was carefully leveled, inspected, and left to cure before the next was placed. Puddlers moved across the surface, searching for any flaw or foreign object. If a man had fallen in, the process would have stopped, the body recovered, the work inspected for voids or cracks. Block by block, the dam rose. 230 interlocking columns took shape, none poured deep or fast enough to swallow a worker without trace. The only exception came on November 8, 1933, when W.A. Jameson was trapped after a form wall collapsed. Crews spent 16 hours chiseling him free from the hardened mix. Jameson did not become a permanent part of the dam. His rescue, and the engineering vigilance that followed, stand as the real record. The myth persists, but the truth is harder, colder, and easier to overlook. The Bureau of Reclamation's official ledger lists 96 men lost to the Hoover Dam project. Their names are carved in bronze, repeated in government essays, and cited in every tourist guide. But the ledger tells only part of the story. In a parallel column, independent researchers have counted at least 112, sometimes as many as 116 dead. The gap is not a matter of bookkeeping error, it is a matter of policy. The Bureau's tally excludes anyone who died off-site, after leaving the payroll, or from illnesses that management chose not to recognize as industrial. 42 deaths are recorded as pneumonia, yet period medical records and occupational health studies suggest many of these men were overcome by carbon monoxide in the tunnels, not by infection. Diesel exhaust filled the air where ventilation failed, and men collapsed at their posts or days later in Boulder City's hospital. If a worker died from gas inhalation but the certificate read pneumonia, his death was quietly omitted from the official count. The result is a sanitized number, one that erases the slow, invisible toll of heat and poison. The real cost, buried in death certificates and off-the-books burials, is far higher than the plaque admits. On December 20th, 1921, a government surveyor named John Gregory Tierney boarded a small barge to take river measurements below Black Canyon. A sudden flash flood struck without warning. The river rose, the current snapped the boat, and Tierney vanished into the water. His body was never recovered. 14 years later, on the same date, his son Patrick William Tierney was working high above the canyon floor as a high scaler. Patrick lost his footing on a scaffold on the west abutment, fell 30 feet, and died from his injuries. Coroner records confirm both deaths. Father and son lost to the same project on the same day of the year. The 6 companies' accident register lists John as the dam's first fatality and Patrick as the last, before construction finished. Their names appear together on the memorial plaque, but the ledger offers no space for family grief. For the Tierneys, the cost of Hoover Dam was not a number. It was a date carved into memory, repeated in tragedy. Inside the Hoover Dam tunnels, men faced temperatures that soared past 120 degrees, sometimes reaching 140. The air shimmered with heat and exhaust, thick with the fumes of gasoline engines running day and night. Shifts rotated around the clock in 8-hour blocks, but the work never stopped. Every hour lost meant money, $5,000 per day in penalties if the project fell behind. That clause sat at the heart of the contract. driving Superintendent Frank Crowe to keep the concrete flowing and the crews moving, no matter the conditions. By midsummer 1931, the strain broke. On August 8th, hundreds of workers walked off the job, demanding clean water, shorter hours, and relief from the suffocating heat inside the tunnels. The strike lasted a week. Crowe refused their demands, brought in strikebreakers, and held the line. When the men returned, a few improvements appeared. Extra water, better lighting, but the worst hazards remained. The relentless heat and poisonous air continued to take lives, often quietly. Many deaths would later be written off as pneumonia, their connection to the dam erased by a line on a death certificate. The official story counted only what could not be ignored. The rest vanished into the ledger's blank spaces. High scalers worked where no machine could reach. Suspended from ropes, they chipped away loose rock on the canyon walls, clearing the way for the dam's concrete shell. Their nickname, the human pendulum, came from the way they swung out over empty air, sometimes hundreds of feet above the river. For this, they earned $6 to $8 a day, more than most laborers, but the pay came with a price. Each morning they climbed down the cliff face, carrying drills, hammers, and a simple cap made from thick leather hardened with coal tar. This early hard hat was a crude defense against falling stones, but it offered little protection if a man lost his grip or if the rope snapped. Accident logs from the 6 companies show 5 high scalers fell during construction, and 2 did not survive. The others were pulled to safety by their crew, using rope loops and raw strength. These men risked everything for a wage that barely kept their families in food and shelter. Their stories rarely made the official reports, but the scars on the canyon walls still bear their names. The contract that brought Hoover Dam to life carried a line that echoed the prejudices of its era. The contract included a clause that read, "No person of Chinese descent shall be employed on any portion of the work covered by this agreement." That clause, typed into Section 3B of the 6 companies' master contract, was not a relic from the distant past. It was policy enforced and stamped into the rules that governed every hiring decision. On the ground, the workforce reflected these exclusions. Of more than 21,000 men on the payroll at peak, only 381 were black, a share just under 2%. Their assignments rarely went beyond hauling materials or laboring in the lowest paid, least visible jobs. Native American crews, mostly Apache and Hopi, were brought in for the hardest digging and blasting, paid not by the day, but by the yard. $2.75 for every cubic yard of rock removed, compared to a standard $4 daily wage for white workers. The hierarchy was visible in the camps as well. Supervisors and skilled tradesmen lived in Boulder City, a planned enclave with brick houses, indoor plumbing, and a daily water allotment. The rest, the bulk of the labor force, endured ragtown, a sprawl of tents and shacks pitched on the desert floor. There, water was rationed to 2 gallons a day, sewage ran in open ditches, and the heat inside the canvas shelters often climbed past 120 degrees. Separate water buckets arrived late for black workers. The dam's grandeur rose from a foundation of disposable labor, written into contracts, recorded in payrolls, and lived out in the daily divide between Boulder City's order and Ragtown's neglect. Hoover Dam rises 726 feet above the Colorado River, anchored in the canyon by a base thick enough to swallow a city block. Its mass, over 4.36 million cubic yards of concrete, was not poured as a single monolith, but assembled from 230 interlocking blocks, each set in place with mathematical precision. To keep the structure from cracking under its own heat, engineers threaded a network of refrigeration pipes through the concrete, stretching 590 miles, enough to cross the state of Arizona and back. Chilled water coursed through these veins day and night, pulling away the heat of curing concrete. Every block had to be placed on schedule. Every hour of delay threatened to throw the entire project off balance. The scale demanded relentless speed. The cooling system was not just an engineering feat, it was a race against time, against heat, and against the limits of endurance. The dam's grandeur is measured not only in height and volume, but in the pressure to keep it rising, block after block, without pause. Hoover Dam still powers cities across the southwest, more than 4 billion kilowatt hours each year, even as drought pulls Lake Mead down by over 150 feet. The concrete core, tested in 1995, remains stronger than the day it was poured. Tourists stream past turbines and spillways, pausing at the bronze plaque near the visitor center. It lists 96 names, the official dead, the men the Bureau of Reclamation chose to remember. There is no mention of those lost to heat or gas, no record of the segregated crews, or the men whose deaths were erased by a line on a death certificate. The plaque speaks of American ingenuity and perseverance, not of the erased or the expendable. The dam's shadow stretches across the desert, its legacy measured in power delivered and names left behind. The silence on that memorial is as much a part of the structure as the concrete itself. Today, Hoover Dam still towers over the river, its turbines humming, its concrete immaculate. But beneath that monument lies an accounting that was never finished. In every statistic left blank, a human story was buried. And, until those names are spoken, the real cost remains hidden in plain sight.